Conflicting reports tonight on whether the U.S. will soon indict Julian Assange on spying charges. But in our third story, one Republican Congressman, Ron Paul of Texas, argues that the public's hostility towards WikiLeaks is misguided. In fact, leaks provide the citizens of the nation a great service. Remember the Pentagon Papers, the man behind the release of those documents. Daniel Ellsberg will join us in a moment. An attorney for Assange expecting indictment soon, telling ABC News any prosecution under the Espionage Act would, in my view, be unconstitutional and puts at risk all media organizations in the U.S. Earlier this week, the Attorney General, Mr. Holder, confirming he ordered a criminal probe, claiming the leaks put the country at risk. But in a sign the Justice Department is perhaps struggling with how to proceed, one official tells NBC News today that legal action against Assange, quote, is not imminent. This as the House Judiciary Committee plans its first hearing on WikiLeaks scheduled for next week. And while lawmakers from both parties have expressed interest in giving the government new authority to prosecute the leaks, Republican Congressman Ron Paul of Texas taking to the House floor in support of Assange and WikiLeaks.
The hysterical reaction makes one wonder if this is not an example of killing the messenger for the bad news. Despite what is claimed, information so far released, though classified, has caused no known harm to any individual, but it has caused plenty of embarrassment to our government. The truth gained from the Pentagon Papers revealed that lies were told about the Gulf of Tonkin attack. Just as with the Vietnam War, the Iraq War was based on lies. We were never threatened by weapons of mass destruction or al-Qaeda in Iraq, though the attack on Iraq was based on this false information. Do the American people deserve to know the truth regarding the ongoing war in Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Yemen? Why is the hostility mostly directed at Assange, the publisher, and not our government's failure to protect classified information, which has resulted in the greatest number of deaths? Lying us into war, or WikiLeaks revelations, or the release of the Pentagon Papers?
Joining me now, as promised, the man behind the release of the Pentagon Papers, Daniel Ellsberg, the subject of the documentary, The Most Dangerous Man in America. Pleasure to have you here, sir. The State Department said that Assange has a political objective, and that precludes him from being considered a journalist. So a political objective, that means they'd have to prosecute the Democratic Party or Fox News or the League of Women Voters?
They'd be happy to do that.
Is this just an excuse for...
I would say that is an excuse. By the way, that's a fascinating clip you just did.
For Mr. Paul,
I agreed with everything he said. He said it very well. I couldn't say it better. It's not the first time with Ron Paul. I often disagree with him on domestic policy, on foreign policy, on the Constitution, on Homeland Security, on intervention. He speaks very well, and I think what he just said was exactly right.
If the U.S. indeed indicts Julian Assange, what does that mean for the First Amendment?
Well, there have been a number of indictments already before. Mine was the very first. Before me, no one had ever been indicted for giving information to the American public, for disclosing under the Espionage Act or any other act. But since then, before Obama, there were two others. One of those President Obama dismissed against the AIPAC former employees. Obama actually has, if he indicts, in this case, he will have indicted 5. Already he's indicted 4, more than all previous presidents put together. So he's already, his Justice Department is already considering the Espionage Act as if it were an official secrets act, a British official secrets act, which it was not intended to be. But as I say, other Justice Departments have tried that before. The real difference would be if there is a conviction in any one of these cases, and it's upheld by the Supreme Court, which takes the case. This has never happened.
Right.
If that happens, then we have an official secrets act, formerly called the Espionage Act. And that will be very serious. It will mean that unauthorized disclosures of the kind that appear every other day in the New York Times, creditably, it's what makes the New York Times indispensable, I would say, one of the major factors, those will dry up very considerably. People like Bob Woodward, who would be indictable under this, or Cy Hirsch, may well go to jail when they're brought in front of a grand jury and ordered to tell who their sources were for the classified documents they've directly quoted, or the Times reporters. But a lot of them won't, and we'll have a lot less knowledge of exactly what we're doing and what we plan in the way of foreign policy, and we have too little now. That led to Iraq, it led to Vietnam. Those weren't caused by too many leaks. Those were caused by the absence of leaks beforehand.
Speaking of them, you have a sort of a wish list of WikiLeaks, a few items that you'd specifically like. Can you go into some brief details?
Well, one of them, which I've had for some time, I would like to see the current classified estimate of the strength of the Taliban we're facing in Afghanistan, the order of battle they call it, and to compare that to last year before President Obama's escalation. We've had a year now. My guess is strongly that it will show them to be larger than they were before.
Of course.
Which raises the question of how much is it worth to us to strengthen the Taliban in the future, and does that really improve our security or weaken it? The other thing I'd like to see is the Pentagon Papers of Afghanistan and Iraq. We don't have those. The current WikiLeaks people didn't have access to those. High-level, top-secret decision papers and estimates. I'd like to see those, and of Yemen, and of a number of other places, actually. Somalia, where we're intervening. Yemen, I said Pakistan, very definitely. I mentioned Bob Woodward. His latest book comes very close to being the Pentagon Papers of this latest escalation. I really learned a lot from it. He seems to cite dozens, if not hundreds, of classified top-secret documents of the kind I'd like. I would like to see the whole document. So if Woodward doesn't put them on the web with minor redactions that he considers necessary for security, and indeed, if this indictment occurs, he would face prosecution. If he did put them on, he'd face prosecution for his latest book. So he could send them to WikiLeaks.
Daniel Ellsberg, the upcoming documentary is called The Most Dangerous Man in America. What a title to have. An American Hero would be another title. A great pleasure to meet you. Thank you for coming in.
The nearest analog is the Pentagon Papers, which was released in the early 70s. That exposed how the United States was prosecuting the war in Vietnam. That was some 10,000 pages, and some of those pages were accepted and put into the New York Times and other US newspapers. It wasn't for several years that a book was published of some 5,000 of those pages by Beacon Press. This situation is different in that it's not just more material and being pushed to a bigger audience and much sooner. If you like, everyone has the book, the whole lot at once, but rather that people can give back. So people around the world who are reading this are able to comment on it and put it in context and understand the full situation. That is not something that has previously occurred, and that is something that can only be brought about as a result of the internet. Militaries keep information secret to prosecute their part of a war, but also to hide abuse. And there is a military argument for keeping some information secret that is very timely. So an example of where troops are about to deploy. But that information expires quickly. And this information ranges from 2004 to 2010. So that argument is not valid for this type of information. This legend on my t-shirt is really quite nice. It's from the Norwegian Journalists Association, SKUP, and it says, dig down in time. And it's a reference to the snowfalls in Norway, that if you're up in the mountains and there's a lot of snow, you've got to dig down in time to be safe. But for investigative journalism, this is dig down into the archives.
WikiLeaks' release of classified information has generated a lot of attention worldwide in the past few weeks. The hysterical reaction makes one wonder if this is not an example of killing the messenger for the bad news.
Exactly. That was Congressman Ron Paul talking about WikiLeaks. I'm back now with my guest, Jesse Ventura. Jesse, you said exactly, so you agree with Ron Paul there?
Absolutely. In fact, if you'd have continued with that statement, Representative Paul, as you know, I dedicated this book to him. He's the only one there that has the courage that'll stand up. He made the great statement that in a free country, when telling the truth, you can get charged for treason, we're in big trouble.
Even if you've stolen the information?
The stolen information, excuse me, we all pay taxes. All that information is paid for by my tax dollars. I have every right to know how my taxes are spent, how every single penny of it is spent. I have the right to know that. They're using my money.
You served in the Navy.
Yep.
Would you have been absolutely happy for every private memo involving your Navy SEAL group to come out?
No, but
Why
there's
not?
a difference.
What's the difference?
But the difference is
You're paid
because
for by the taxpayer.
yeah, but it could jeopardize the mission initially. Once
WikiLeaks couldn't?
once the mission's over, you're not jeopardizing
You don't
it.
think anything published in WikiLeaks could possibly jeopardize
Well, wait a minute. Now,
lives or military operation?
Well, let's go to this young man that's in prison right now.
Right, Bradley Manning.
Bradley Manning. I hope they're giving him his rights, which I don't think they are. They're holding him. He can't talk to a lawyer.
On
Who
that,
knows?
I agree with
All
you.
right,
He should get
Bradley
his
Manning.
rights.
The first thing he released was that helicopter murdering those people, murdering them. So now Bradley Manning's in jail, but the helicopter murderers are still free. They're fine. So apparently leaking this is more important than committing murder.
Like I said to you.
Wait, Piers, answer that for me.
No, let me...
Answer that for me.
You haven't answered my question.
All right.
My question
But I've been answering all of them. You haven't answered one yet.
I'm interviewing you, Jesse. That's the way this works.
Not with me.
Well, that's the way it works with me.
Well, butt heads then.
Well, look, I can answer perhaps for my brother, who's a British Army colonel. And when I discussed WikiLeaks with him, he says that the impact of releasing private memos, private reports from the military when they're in operations is incredibly dangerous.
All right, go to my book. Sure,
I believe you agree with that.
I agree with that. I agree with that. But go to my book and see. Currently, our government every year declares 16 million things top secret. 16 million. I would say that's about everything. So what do we get to know about?
But my point, Jesse...
My point is, when they're abusing what's secret by classifying everything they do, the public can't see. Read in the back of the book what some of the great founders of this country said about secretive government.
Did you believe it was in the public interest that WikiLeaks revealed, for example, that Colonel Gaddafi had 4 mistresses?
I could care less how many women Colonel Gaddafi has.
Is it in the public interest? Is it in the public interest? Is it in the public interest?